While Copper City slept, Andy and his father carried Kavik through the dark woods and into the back door of Dr. Walker's house. Dr. Walker had fixed a pallet with an old blanket in a corner of the room off his kitchen. They put the dog down carefully and untied the ropes from about his body. Andy's father asked, "Do you want us to stay and help?" "I'll take it from here. I want both of you out of here, now." "Vic, we appreciate this. We really do." Sure. Now get, will you?" Andy stroked the unconscious Kavik's big head and asked Dr. Walker, "Can I see him tomorrow night?" "Make it late," Dr. Walker said. "The later, the better. If there's a light in the office, don't come in because I'll have a patient. Wait until the light's in the back here. And for Pete's sake, be careful. If somebody sees you coming and going out of my back door every night, they'll start to wonder." "I'll be very careful," Andy promised. "Don't expect too much," Walker warned. "I'll do all I can, but I'm only human." "Yes, sir," Andy said. "I know." Andy and his father peeked out the kitchen door, saw all was clear, and went hurriedly across the yard into the black protection of the trees. When Andy slipped through the doctor's back door late the following night, he was sure, for a sick minute, that Kavik was dead. The dog lay as if he had never moved, his eyes closed. There was a cast on one front leg, as well as a white patch on his flank where the lynx had torn him. A bottle was fastened to the back of a chair, with a tube running down the dog's leg. The liquid in the bottle was half gone. It seemed to Andy's anxious eyes that Kavik looked thinner, weaker than ever. "He's still alive," Dr. Walker said. "He's got 3 broken ribs, but luckily none of them punctured a lung. His front leg is broken. His pelvis is broken. There's a hole in his other side as big as a 50-cent piece where a piece of metal stabbed almost completely through him. He's lost a lot of blood." "Is he going to live?" Andy asked fearfully. "I'm not sure yet." Andy knelt beside Kavik and began stroking his head gently. Dr. Walker picked up a book, sat in an old rocker under the light, and began reading. From time to time, he glanced at the boy. Finally, he closed the book and said gruffly, "I've done all I can for him. The rest is up to him and nature. But he's got one big thing in his favor." "What's that?" "He's part wolf. That gives him a toughness an all dog doesn't have." "Anyway," Dr. Walker grumbled, "he'd have to be tougher than whalebone to live through your horsing him up on that chunk of plane wing and then dragging him through the snow." "I was very careful," Andy said. "I eased him out of the cage and slid him on the wing. I didn't lift or pull him. I didn't tie him tight on the wing either, just tight enough so he wouldn't slide off. And I didn't jerk when I pulled the wing through the snow. I did give him a drink. Maybe I shouldn't have." "How'd you do that?" Andy explained how he'd packed his handkerchief with snow, let it melt, and then dribbled the few drops from the soaked handkerchief into Kavik's mouth. "Giving him a drink was good. You're sure he swallowed?" "I stroked his throat like this. I felt him swallow." Dr. Walker's dark eyes studied the boy. "Did you have first aid in school?" "We've never had such a thing." Walker opened his book and began to read again. After a minute, he glanced at Andy and muttered again, Several minutes later, the bell rang on the office door. Dr. Walker put aside his book with a sigh. "Somebody with a bellyache," he grumbled. "You be quiet in here." Andy sat stroking Kavik's head and watching the liquid from the bottle trickle down the tube into his body. A minute later, Dr. Walker came into the kitchen. That crazy Gabby Nelson ran a sliver in his hand this time of night? He shook his head. I'd better go. Andy rose. He stood looking down at the wasted figure of the dog. The breath of life barely stirred his sunken flanks, and not once tonight had he looked at Andy. Andy's eyes followed a drop of liquid from the bottle down the tube where it disappeared into the dog's vein. By so little was his life held. A wave of despair rushed over Andy, and he said in a thick voice, He's going to die. I know he is. He turned and went quickly out the door. But Kavik did not die. There was nothing soft or flabby in his makeup. He clung to the slender thread of life with a tenacity only a half-wild creature, raised and toughened to the trail by a man such as Charlie One-Eye could know. Each night Andy was relieved to find Kavik still alive. He watched as the bottle slowly fed the precious life drops into the dog's bloodstream. But Kavik didn't move or open his eyes. It was on the third night, when Andy knocked softly on Dr. Walker's door and was admitted, that he found Kavik's eyes open and the bottle and tube no longer attached to him. He's going to live, isn't he? Andy asked happily. Dr. Walker permitted himself a faint smile. He'll live, but he's not out of the woods yet. Andy knelt beside Kavik and reached out to stroke his head. As the dog's eyes watched the hand, he seemed to try to draw away, but was too weak. He's not used to being petted or handled, Dr. Walker said. All he knows about a hand is getting belted by it. Andy let his fingers touch the sharp, pointed ears, stray down, and scratch gently at their roots. What do you mean he's not out of the woods? I don't know if he's going to make a full recovery. How can we tell when he has? If he doesn't limp on that front leg, if the pelvis heals properly, and if his back legs get strong again. Andy continued scratching lightly at the base of Kavik's ears. It seemed to him that the dog relaxed a little. When will you be sure? How should I know? Dr. Walker shook his head annoyed. You're the darndest kid for rushing things. I told you, nature would have to do the job. That it'll take time. I just want him to be all right. Sure. Dr. Walker went to the cupboard, took out the remains of a roast, cut off a handful of small pieces, and handed them to Andy. Here, feed him. He can eat now? Of course. That's why I quit intravenous feeding. Andy held a piece of meat toward Kavik, but the dog pulled his head away and watched him warily. Put it on the floor, Dr. Walker said. He's not used to being hand-fed. Andy put the meat within reach on the floor. Kavik moved his head forward and smelled it carefully. Finally, he took the meat and swallowed it. Andy fed him the remainder, piece by piece. The front doorbell rang, and before Dr. Walker could rise to go to the office, the kitchen door opened and little Gabby Nelson stood there. His name was really Henry, and everyone said he was not too bright. But to Copper City, he was Gabby because he was always repeating everything he knew. He held out his bandaged hand and said in a high, squeaky voice, Doc, you said come back tonight so as you could look at this, remember? Dr. Walker tried to move between Gabby and the open back room door so he couldn't see Kavik. Andy reached for the door to swing it closed when Gabby looked around the doctor's lean frame and saw them. He moved into the kitchen and looked at Andy and Kavik. A dog? He said. You doctoring a dog, Doc? This is a very special dog, Gabby, Dr. Walker said easily, and tried to lead Gabby out of the kitchen. This is the dog that won the North American at Fairbanks a few days ago. He's a champion, Gabby. Gabby refused to be moved. He kept looking at Kavik, You ain't a dog doctor, you're a people doctor. That's right, but this is a valuable dog. He needed help or he'd have died. But dogs, Doc? Gabby insisted. You using the same knives and scissors and things like that on him you use on me? Medicines too, Doc? Now, I don't like him getting the same medicines I do. Dr. Walker led Gabby into the office and pointed to a small cabinet. Everything I use is sterilized in there, Gabby. Everything. Understand? Sure, Doc. But using them on a dog and giving people's medicines to a dog? Gabby shook his head. Town sure wouldn't like it. Did it know? It's not going to know, Dr. Walker said. Sure wouldn't like it. Gabby shook his head gravely. Nobody knows but you, Dr. Walker said sternly. So if the town finds out about the dog, they're going to hear what you've been doing up there in the old mine shaft all these years. You know the whole town will stampede up there and all your work will be stomped out of sight. Oh, now, Doc, you wouldn't, Gabby said, suddenly fearful. Nobody knows but you. I'm right close to hitting a big vein. I know I am. Then you'd better be sure nobody hears about this dog. I wasn't going to say nothing. Honest, you can count on me, Doc. All right, Dr. Walker agreed. As long as nobody learns about the dog, your secret's safe, but not 1 second longer. Okay, Gabby thrust out a grimy hand. You got a deal. They shook hands gravely. Then Dr. Walker said, Now come over here and let me look at that hand. Dr. Walker returned to the kitchen a few minutes later, and Andy asked fearfully, Do you think Gabby will tell? If he does, he knows I'll broadcast about his activities in the mine shaft. He doesn't want that. What's he doing up there? Andy asked. Dad says that shaft's been abandoned for years. Gabby has the crazy idea he's going to uncover a new vein of copper that he'll become rich and Copper City will boom again. Nobody knows but you? That's what he says. He sneaks up there every dusk and works half the night shoring up the old tunnel and digging new tunnels. He's done an amazing amount of work. I learned about it a year ago when a rock fell on his foot. He couldn't pay his doctor bill, so he told me about the mine and promised me a big stake in his new strike. Dr. Walker stood frowning thoughtfully. Maybe I scared Gabby enough, and maybe I didn't, but he could forget and talk. If he does, I know a few busybodies who'd just love to start snooping and spreading tales. If they discovered the dog, I'd be in trouble. But if they didn't, they'd put it down to more of Gabby's blabbing and forget about it. We've got to get Kavik out of here tonight, Andy. Is it safe to take him? I've done all I can. He's getting no medicine now, no intravenous feeding. He just needs a lot of rest and all he can eat. He can get that at your place just as well as here. I'd like to have kept him a couple more days, but it's too dangerous. Get that wing section out of the corner. They eased Kavik onto the wingtip and tied him securely. Then Dr. Walker and Andy carried him back through the dark trees to the Evans home. Laura brought blankets and made him a bed in a corner of the kitchen. He's not used to a house and being around people, so this will be good for him, she said. No male, man or dog, can resist a woman's kitchen. You might be right, Dr. Walker agreed. They eased Kavik off the wingtip and onto the blankets. Dr. Walker said, all he needs is the usual care, water and food. Let him sleep. He should do a lot of sleeping. What if he tries to get up? Laura asked. He won't, until he knows he can. He's smarter than some patients I've had. When he does get up, have Andy come for me. I'll take the cast off his leg and we'll see how he looks. And Andy, come at night. Then you think he'll make a full recovery? Andy's father asked. I don't know, but we'll get a pretty good idea once he starts moving around. Kavik was settled in a corner of Laura's warm kitchen. Every night when Andy came in from school, his first questions were, "Has Kavik got up yet? Has he walked?" "Not yet," his mother would answer. "Remember, Dr. Walker said it would take time." Andy would kneel beside the dog, stroke his fur, scratch at the roots of his sharp ears, and say anxiously, "He's looking better, don't you think, Mother? I'm sure he's gaining a little weight. His ribs don't stick out so much. He ought to get up soon, hadn't he?" But Kavik didn't get up. He didn't even try. He continued to sleep long hours, and sometimes he dreamed. Through his mind paraded the events of his short, hard life. There were the shouting and cursing of Charlie One-Eye, the sting of the lash, the solid smash of his hard hand. He lived again his countless fights with the rest of the team. He felt the biting cold of 40 below when he was burrowed deep into the snow for protection. Once more, he ran through the brutal months of training, digging in with raw, bleeding feet, pulling until he was ready to drop. For this, he had been fed one small fish a day. Hunger was an ache that never left. Over and over he ran through the grueling miles of the North American.